Over 2 million lives have been saved because of mRNA technology. It helped us develop COVID-19 vaccines in record time. People are going to die because we're cutting short funding for this technology.
People are going to die because we are cutting short funding for this technology. That person is Dr. Jerome Adams. If he looks familiar to you at all, that's because he was Surgeon General in Donald Trump's first presidential term, saying now that people are going to die because of a newly announced decision by Donald Trump in the second Trump presidential administration. Dr. Jerome Adams is not the only veteran of the first Trump term who is directly, urgently making this case. A former top biodefense official from Trump's first term tells NPR this decision, quote, endangers the national security of the United States. Another health official from Trump's first term tells NPR the new policy is, quote, irresponsible, saying, quote, we're taking our country from 2025 back to 1940. And we all know that's a recipe for disaster and failure. The thing that has all these public health officials freaking out, this irresponsible recipe for disaster and failure, is Trump's inexplicable decision to cancel $500 million in contracts related to mRNA technology. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced last week he's canceling funding for the development of mRNA vaccines, including ones against respiratory illnesses like COVID and the flu. In the COVID pandemic, we lost more than 1 million American lives. We would have lost millions, multiple millions more, had it not been for the mRNA vaccines that were developed during Trump's first term. Now, apparently, though, Trump is calling it all off, or at least RFK Jr. is. Trump recently appeared perplexed by the question when he was asked by reporters about this decision to kill off mRNA vaccines. He honestly did not seem to understand what the question meant or what his administration's new policy was. But doctors and scientists and experts in public health of all points on the ideological spectrum are not just criticizing this decision, they are warning that Americans are going to die because of it. Michael Osterholm is an esteemed epidemiologist who has served in senior roles at the CDC. He's been an advisor to both Republican and Democratic administrations. When the AP recently asked Dr. Osterholm about Trump's health secretary cutting off funding for mRNA vaccines, Dr. Osterholm was very blunt. He said, quote, I don't think I've seen a more dangerous decision in public health in my 50 years in the business. Joining us now is Michael Osterholm. He is director for the University of Minnesota Center for Infectious Disease Research. Dr. Osterholm, I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why is this such a dangerous decision?
Well, the vaccine research that we desperately need to have is research that would actually make us much better prepared for the next influenza pandemic, which is going to happen, and it could be much worse than COVID. Right now in the world, if we had a pandemic, we could only make about enough vaccine for not quite 1/4 of the population of the world in the first 18 months. The approach we use is embryonated chicken eggs, which are just very slow. It would take years to get all the people vaccinated. In the meanwhile, mRNA technology, if we continue to research and apply it, we could likely have enough vaccine for the world in the first 8 to 10 months. Big difference. We're not talking about saving a couple of lives, of millions of lives. We're talking about saving many millions of lives. In addition, this vaccine has a number of other applications for other infectious diseases, as well as cancer vaccines, and literally all of that has gone down the drain with this decision.
So it's not just the speed at which you can develop vaccines in relation to emerging pathogens. It's the volume at which you can quickly produce them. But it's also, in addition to that, sort of the nimbleness of this technology that can apply potentially to vaccines for all sorts of things for which we currently have no vaccine technology. Is that fair?
Absolutely fair. And I think the important point to note here is that with the experience we saw from COVID, we know how fast we can make these vaccines, and we know we can even make them better with more research, meaning that these are good vaccines we have now for COVID, but they're not great. They don't necessarily prevent you from getting infected. They don't necessarily stop you from transmitting the virus, but they keep you from becoming seriously ill, being hospitalized, and dying. With more research, we actually know that we can make these vaccines even better. That has all been cut off. And so even for just the regular applications of looking at mRNA technology, it's pretty much out the window.
Dr. Osterholm, in his time as HHS Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has made a lot of very, very, very unpopular decisions, and some bizarre ones, and has made some bizarre pronouncements in his time in public life and in public office. It seems to me that the reaction to this mRNA funding thing is of sort of a different character, different magnitude, and you're hearing it from different quarters than you've heard object to some of the other things that he has done. Do you see it that way? Do you think there's any possibility that the magnitude of the negative response to this decision might force its reversal?
Well, I can only hope so, but let me just point out that this administration continues to trip over the facts so much they must have a terribly bloody nose by now. Like, for example, this very decision. Mr. Kennedy announced this last week, and he emphasized the fact that the reason we're not doing that is because mRNA vaccines are not beneficial and they're dangerous. They have a high risk of causing problems, which, of course, neither of those statements are true. This past weekend, the head of the NIH was on Steve Bannon's podcast and said, no, the decision to take this vaccine money away was because of the fact that the secretary decided that the public no longer had faith in mRNA technology, and therefore why invest in it? Well, in fact, the reason the public has questions about it is because of the kind of statements that he has continued to make since the very beginning of its availability and in the pandemic. And so when you can't get your facts straight, I can't even know what to react to in terms of what decisions have to be overturned. How would they be overturned? So this is one of the challenges we have today. Whatever relative and at HHS in a given moment could be very different an hour later.
Michael Osterholm, Director of the University of Minnesota Center for Infectious Disease Research. Thank you for your work, sir, and thank you for talking to us about this tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.